let's get you guys hired. If you haven't seen this backdrop or my face before, hi, I'm Catherine. I make tons of videos about college and after college, and now that I'm in the 9-to-5 world, I have a very different perspective on the job search. I made a couple of videos on the same topic back when I was in college after I got my job offer, and I'll link those down below if you want to watch those first. That being said, I have learned so much since I've been out of college, and I feel like I have more of an insider scoop on how to get a job post-grad. So if you're watching this video around when it was posted, it probably means you're in frantic mode because you're almost closing in on the end of your senior year and you need to find something to keep you occupied after college, and you need to find something stat. Hopefully these tips help. Starting from the very beginning, figure out which cities you want to be in. If it's the whole country, if it's the whole world, that's great. Really figure out if you can see yourself anywhere else, if you're comfortable expanding your horizons, because that will open up so much more possibility for you and give you a way higher chance of getting the job you want after college. Next, think of, I would say, 20 places just off the top of your head that you'd love to work. Brands that you respect, companies you'd have friends that worked at that they know, they like. Just think of 20 places you'd love to work and start off with that if you haven't started yet. I asked you to think of those because my next tip is that you want to think outside of just LinkedIn and those college job boards. Those are a fantastic net to catch a bunch of great like university hire roles, but there are a lot of companies that might slip through the cracks there. When I was in college, I bookmarked probably 20 to 30 different companies' job boards, and every single Monday morning I would check them. You can check them 3 times a week if you want to, and I caught a lot more openings that way. Number 4, once you find a bunch of positions you want to apply to, you need to create a spreadsheet. You need to mark down all the jobs you're looking at, when you applied, when the due date is, if you've had your first interview, who the recruiter is. You need to make a whole storage of this because you're gonna want to apply to hundreds of roles, I'm not kidding. And you don't want to miss a deadline for a really cool position that you really wanted. I'm not going to go in depth about how to do your resume, but what I do want to say is that I never created different resumes per the type of roles I was applying to, and I wish I had. For example, me as a business major, I was open to roles in sales, in marketing, in like business strategy, and what I should have done was keep the same things on your resume, but the bullet points, you want to swing them so they fit those categories more easily. So if I was going for a sales role, I'd make things sound more numbers based and more like I hit my goal. If I was going for marketing, I would make my same position sound more like, oh, I did creative strategy, I packaged content, I, worked on projects, that kind of thing. So you want to just tailor it slightly. You don't have to create like 50 resumes, it's a lot of work. I would just create like for every job bucket you're applying to, create one version for that. If you're finding that your resume looks like a skinny legend and doesn't have enough on it, I'd recommend beefing it up by going on Skillshare. Looks great on your resume if you can put some accreditation programs or some self-learning programs. It shows that you take initiative. I've been fortunate to have Skillshare sponsor me in the past, but if you haven't learned about it, it's an online learning community. There are already 25,000 classes on there, so you're guaranteed to find something that'll fit your resume really nicely and fill that gap you've been looking to fill. Even if you're not looking at it for a career reason, but you want to use it for a creative venture, they have anything from design to business to coding. If one of the positions you really want says that you should have experience in Excel or SQL or Photoshop, you actually don't have to lie in your resume or in the interview. You could try those things out first. That way you feel more comfortable with the interview questions. It's not gonna be crazy expensive either. It's gonna be $10 a month, which is gonna be totally worth it. You'll be able to earn that money back the first week on your job. The premium membership actually gives you unlimited access to classes, so you'll never feel at a loss. And there's already 7 million people on the platform, so you have a lot of people to trust. For those of you that want to join those 7 million, the first 500 people that click on the link in the description are going to get a 2-month free trial, which is plenty of time to fatten up your resume. So my next tip, I think this is number 7, would be to screenshot or save your job rec always. It might disappear. It usually disappears, especially by the time you interview, and you want to have those bullet points that you can prepare your interview answers and feel comfortable talking about how you could do well in the role. I am flying through these so that you guys can finish the video quickly and get started on your job applications. But number 8, and this is the most important tip. If you take nothing away from this video, but tip number 8, that is perfectly fine because this is the tip that will get you hired, and that would be to ask for referrals. This is such a commonplace tip, but what was not obvious to me when I was in college and has become very clear now is that the current employees at that company have an incentive to get you hired. I literally get a bonus, like a pretty penny bonus too, like not just like a few $100s, like it's a good size bonus if I get people hired at Adobe. So if you're watching this and you actually want to work at Adobe, find a job rec and send it to me and I'll be happy to work with you and get you hired. When I was in college, I always felt very awkward asking for the referral, but you should not, because they're oftentimes going to want to offer that up to you. So you can quit feeling scared about it and just sort of ask them if they'd be comfortable referring you, because oftentimes they are. The other piece of this is that I know a lot of us are like, I don't really have a great network, like I'm in college, like I don't really have a lot of like adults that I know that are in good fields that I want to work in. That's fine if you don't benefit from nepotism and your family has a lot of connections. Think of recent grads from your college that you know, ask them for referrals. Ask professors if they have previous students that have worked at companies you're looking at and ask them for referrals to connect you. And if nothing else, I've cold reached out on LinkedIn so many times. Very helpful if they go or went to your school. A cold reach out never hurts. It pads that person's ego and makes them think that they're really important. So my most important rule of thumb for applying is to never go into an interview without getting a referral. Like if you're gonna hit apply, preferably beforehand, find someone that can refer you because they might have an internal referral link. But I know especially at my company, so many of the new hires knew someone that worked there before they came in. I cannot stress it enough, like really important that you get over your fear of asking people for help, because that is how you get hired. All right, number 9, once you've gotten the interview, always research your recruiters. And I'm not just talking about research them on LinkedIn. You can go deep on Google, like find out anything you can. Like, did they run track in high school? Like, do they like to bake? Are they a hiker? Like, where do they live? Like, those things can help you make a likable connection. And when applying for a job, people want to know that you're competent, but also likable, because they're going to be working with you for like 40 hours a week. They want to make sure they'll be able to get along with you. So find any similar connection you can. And if you can, put that in the interests or skills area on your resume. If they ask you what you like to do out of work, that's a perfect time to showcase that. But more than anything, if you know someone that knows the hiring manager, ask them what they value. And you might be able to find that out on someone's LinkedIn too. Do they value self-discipline? Do they value grit? Do they value people who take initiative? And then package all your interview answers so you highlight those things. Play into their buzzwords, play into what they like. I've done that with my internal interviews at Adobe and it really has played well. Tip number 10, if you're nervous about interviews, don't be. Figure out 5 to 8 maybe sound bites of experiences you had in college, at internships, otherwise that are a good example of your work ethic. A time you worked through a challenge, a time that you had to work in a team. Like, think of these very general but meaningful experiences and figure out some kind of themes that you can pull out of them. For example, if they ask you how you take on a leadership role, you should be able to package maybe a few of those 8 sound bites into that. That helped me enormously feel comfortable in interviews. You can just have those in front of you for a phone interview and ultimately spin them any way you want. Tip number 11 is something I never realized in college too much, but now that I'm in my first job out of college, like when companies are hiring university grads, the number one thing they look for is your ability to be a fast learner. If you're in college, your resume is not going to be that impressive. Like the skills you gained from 3 months every summer or like a semester, there's no way it can be that relevant to the role. Like I guarantee you, you should not feel self-conscious about your internship experience. You should be able to communicate how you're a fast learner, how you're flexible, because they just want to know that you're teachable, that they can mentor you, and that you'll be able to perform well without a ton of guidance. Number 12, if you can figure out the scope of the role and what you're responsible for day to day, show you've already started working on those things. Find examples from school or from internships where you've done very similar things. In my role, it's a customer-facing role, so they're gonna be like, oh, find some time that you've been able to work customer-facing. I didn't really in my internships, but I could also say with YouTube, oh, my customers were my audience, or I could say my customers are my sponsors, and I worked with this many over this time period, I had this many conversations, I was able to turn these client relationships into this many sponsored videos, yada, yada, yada. Like, figure out how you can spin it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just figure out if you have done anything you can, finesse into being the same as what you do in that job day to day. 13 is after you leave that interview, like once you get in your car or in the Lyft or Uber or whatever, immediately jot down on your phone what you talked about with that interviewer. What did they share with you? What did you share with them? Did they give you any insight about the company that was helpful? Write all those things down so that when you write that thank you note, you can be very specific and very tactful about what you gained from that experience instead of just writing a general thank you note. It's so easy to forget what you talked about in the interview, especially when you're doing, hopefully many interviews a month or a week. So do yourself a favor and jot down some notes after the interview you can point out later. And then you await job offers. And I know there's a lot of job advice I could give in terms of like which offer to accept and how to negotiate and that and that and that. But the title of the video is how to get a job, not how to accept a job. So that will have to wait for another video. Let me know if you want help with that. If you're still watching, leave a comment down below with your dream company or your dream job. I want to know. And maybe people in the comments will also know people at that company. Let's help each other out, okay? I know we're all in desperation mode. And if you feel like you learned something, go ahead and subscribe. I make tons more videos like this, and I hope you'll join the Katherout community. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and Katherout.